Mike Tyson. A monster in the ring who at one point looked unstoppable to the rest of the world. So good, it's as though he wasn't human. But what about the night Mike Tyson became ordinary? First off, let's rewind back the clock to see how this happened. I think most of us are familiar with the story of prime Mike Tyson and his come up. He came up in the ranks as a young monster, becoming youngest heavyweight champion of the world at only 20 years old, which is the youngest someone's ever become world champion. And it was truly nothing like we've ever seen before. The way he was knocking out his opponents in fashion, being a very short heavyweight at only 5'10", just being a young, athletic, brutal monster killing everyone. The young champ very quickly made his way up the ranks, being at the top of the world in his early 20s, crushing his way through top names like Larry Holmes,
Thanks to the body, goes to throw right hand, gets clipped with a big right hand.
Michael Spinks,
The uppercut, body shot, down goes Mike Spinks in. He leads to the right hand, down he goes.
Frank Bruno,
For the Tyson who fought McNeely Mathis. Here's a combination uppercut by Tyson. Tyson laying it on, pouring it on, down goes Bruno into the rope.
the list goes on. Early on in his career, he was obviously trained by the legendary Cus D'Amato, who took him in under his wing at a young age and trained him to be the man he was. But right when he was at the peak of his career, at only 23 years old, things took a turn for the worst. So much problems came into Mike's life, like problems with girls that eventually led to jail time, him splitting up with the legendary Cus D'Amato and changing trainers. He unfortunately got caught up in the high life and was constantly partying and clubbing and kind of fell off track a little bit. Mike at this point was in a very, very dark place in his life, and after all these events, it was like he was never the same. Well, during this time and layoff, there was a fight lined up between him and a man called James Buster Douglas. This is someone who had eventually recently started building his name back up after having a few early losses, and he was on a very big winning streak, knocking out a lot of big names. Mike, even though going through this rough period, accepted this fight, and even still, Buster Douglas was a heavy underdog in this fight. There was still nothing that proved he wasn't the best. He was still a monster from what everyone had seen from him so far in the ring. But this was all going to take a turn for the worst. The people didn't see it that way though, because at this point, Mike Tyson was still 23 years old with a record of 37-0, 33 knockouts, and was the heavyweight champion of the world. So how would Buster Douglas have any chance of beating Mike Tyson? And maybe that's what Mike thought too, because his preparation for this fight was not the best, to say the least. He spent his time partying and clubbing and didn't really train. On the other hand, Buster Douglas trained his heart out and had a fire inside him. He was desperate to win, especially with his mother passing only a few weeks before the fight, and he told his mom before she died he would beat Mike Tyson. But that didn't change anything. He was still an underdog, since he was coming up against the great Mike Tyson. Well, when the fight started, in the first round, something was already off. Mike did not look his usual self. He wasn't as dynamic as he usually was in the ring. It was like Mike Tyson, but without his magic. He was getting countered by Buster Douglas and getting picked apart. This continued throughout most of the fight, and although yes, Mike did have glimpses of success where he was aggressive and started to land, but for the most part, he was getting picked apart and countered effectively by Buster Douglas. And by this point, it's something that the people definitely did not expect, and everyone knew something was up, since Mike is renowned for finishing his opponents early. Well, in the 8th round, Mike did start to come out and see some more success, was finding ways on the inside better and landed a lot more. Buster Douglas was starting to feel the pressure from Mike Tyson and was getting pushed back constantly, taking shot after shot, where eventually Mike cracked him and went in for the kill. He heavily dropped into the canvas, and this is where it gets good. During the countdown, Buster Douglas was actually given 13 seconds to get up and fully recover. And still to this day, this is one of boxing's most controversial moments, as that could have been the decision for the fight for Mike Tyson. And who knows, that could have been a wake up for Mike Tyson, taking the win, and he could have carried on his usual self. But instead, those extra 3 seconds allowed Buster Douglas to get up and recover in time. The ref continued the fight, and a few seconds later, that was the end of the round. And it's fair to say Buster Douglas was saved by the bell. And Buster didn't seem too hurt, so was this a tactic from him to stay on the canvas longer, to try prolong the round so it would finish? Who knows? Round 9 was very different. Tyson initially came out trying to finish Douglas, which he learned would be a big mistake. Since Buster wasn't taken out, he managed to pick up the pace on Mike Tyson after recovering, landing some effective counters like before, and managed to get his shots in, and some pretty effective shots. This led to Mike Tyson eventually being hurt and Douglas landing a flurry that eventually dropped Mike to the canvas. Unfortunately, Mike Tyson was out for the count, and couldn't make it up in time, and this fight was called off. And the man who once looked invincible, the monster of boxing, was put to an end. And after this fight, in my opinion, Mike Tyson was never the same as he was before. But what's the reason for this? Well, like I said, he never prepared well enough for this fight, and taking this loss could have destroyed him mentally. But let's not forget the amount of problems he had in his life, with his longtime trainer Cus D'Amato eventually passing away and him having no one to turn to. Being in a life of fame, money and girls, he probably got caught up in that life, and a lot of allegations from his previous girlfriends probably ruined him a lot too. He faced jail time for that, and he probably was never the same. This man went through a lot, and it shows in the ring, and it's insane how quick Mike Tyson was at the top of the world to rock bottom. And the crazy thing is, Evander Holyfield, another top contender at the time, was actually in attendance of the Mike Tyson Buster Douglas fight, expecting Mike Tyson to win, which would have set up a guaranteed $12 million fight between him and Mike Tyson, which in my opinion would have been an amazing fight if Mike was in his prime and Evander Holyfield was in his prime. But that fight happened way too late, and a bunch of other things got in the way. But it's things like this that make you wonder, if Mike Tyson could create this much of a legacy for himself at only 23 years old and solidify himself as a great, if it wasn't for some events that actually happened, how great could he have actually been? What do you guys think? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on post notifications so you don't miss an upload from us. That'll be all. We'll catch you in the next one.